Oh, first, I think with working with Milutin Sredojevic was a very interesting time for me because I haven't seen a person that has so much capacity from an EQ perspective. His emotional quadrant for me is second to none. His ability to absorb um, difficulty and still not react to every single situation was incredible for me. And he also his assurance of himself and his qualities as a coach and knowing himself was huge because um, he was never intimidated by my presence, never intimidated by my opinions, never intimidated by my honesty also, because I think sometimes maybe even with him I was at times brutally honest and maybe too honest. And as I said, I think that has been for me while I've been a pirate has been my biggest lesson is there were moments that were even captured on television where they'd find us disagreeing, and the TV would capture those moments. And I understand now, when in retrospect, when I sit back and I analyze and I check and I say, in retrospect, I understand why people would assume that in certain moments that disagreeing could have easily be misinterpreted as being disrespectful. And I understand that, because there are times and there are places to disagree. But football being the sport that it is, that pushes so much emotion out of all of us, is one where you've really got to have that emotional control and emotional intelligence, and that was one of the things that Milutin Sredojevic was very good at, was his emotional control and his ability not to react to every situation. And sometimes you would think he'd be dishonest, but he actually would rather not say what is on his mind, in trying to also protect the relationship between sometimes himself and the technical team, or sometimes himself and the players. And that was the biggest lesson that I learned. And like I say, it was probably the biggest mistake that I made as a coach when I arrived at Paris. Was in certain moments I was too honest, and as I said, when you look back, you say, in this moment, maybe with a little bit more emotional intelligence, you would have held back a bit, and waited for the right time. But unfortunately, like we say, you don't have time in football, because if you don't say what's on your mind at that moment and you concede the goal, there's also a lot of that negativity that plays in your head to say, oh my goodness, if only I had spoken about this and stopped this from happening, or that maybe the result would have been different. But it is what it is, and we learn and we live. For an example, I've worked with three different head coaches in the PSL, and all three were completely different, and I could adapt myself to all three, and my role as the assistant was actually very different with all three. And with Milutin was more, he needed me in that moment when he was in charge of Paris to be more of a hands-on decision-making assistant, because he was the more of the emotive one during matches, more passionate, more driving, and at times couldn't make adaptations in relation to what the game needed. And he needed me as an assistant to be able to make those sort of decisions. But with Steve Compella, for an example, or with Pitso Mosimane, they were coaches that were more hands-on on that. And then they needed a different type of an assistant coach, a coach that could assist them with managing of the squad, managing of training content, and that in that other space. So I think as an assistant coach, yours is to try to adapt your character, which is not always easy, to bring balance between yourself and the head coach in relation to his character and the needs of the team, because that's how you get the best out of everybody, and that's not always easy, because sometimes there is a clash of personalities, and how do you then adapt yourself to make sure that you're still not seen as trying to be above or disrespecting the head coach, but also giving your honest input to make sure that the team is just as successful, whether you are in charge or not. I mean, it's the head coach, of course, at the end of the day, is the one that bears the brunt for the result, but ultimately, you're only as good as the people that are around you, and your responsibility as a head coach is to lead the people that are responsible for the results.